Hey everybody, I believe it's about time for another tutorial series. So we're going to be working on a Nerf Airtech 3000 this time. I've already done all the other shots, obviously. This is the last scene I'm shooting. So here's the shell. If you don't know what a 3K is, I'll throw up a picture at the end of the video probably. Or actually, right now, let's go ahead and do that. So as you see, it's a Nerf blaster. It is an air-powered blaster, and it can shoot extremely far when modded properly. Big emphasis on the properly. With right darts and proper fit, it'll do 120 plus, usually pretty easily. So let's just go ahead and jump in. We're going to do materials, tools, and then I'm going to go ahead and disassemble the blaster and take out all the extra crap that we don't need. Because we only need the tank and the turret and, the pump tube pretty much. So let's go ahead and do that, guys, and I'm going to cut to a shot of me, babbling on about materials again. You will need your 3K, of course. Mine is missing the pump handle. Preferably a pretty good conditioned shell, especially with non-rusty screws, because the rusty screws in Airtechs are extremely difficult to get out. So try to get a decent condition one. They're not all that expensive. You can get a really nice one for about 25 bucks plus shipping usually, if not a little bit less than that. You also need a pump from a Nerf Hornet. Now you can use other pumps. I just prefer the Hornet pump because it's thin like a 2K pump and it's got a nice chunky handle on it, and it actually goes up to pretty good, decent pressure. So these you can pick up, I believe, for about $6 to $8 from somebody if you don't already have a spare Hornet laying around from thrifting. Some of the most important things you will need 6 1-foot segments of PETG, or PETG, however you want to say it. This item is a part number on McMaster. That item number is 2044. T is in the letter T, 43. And it comes in 4-foot segments, and it can be pretty expensive to ship because it comes in an 8-foot tube when they ship it. So I really highly recommend that you just buy it from somebody. I personally sell PETG for 50 cents a foot, and it's cut perfectly on both ends and reamed out. So there's that. You also, if you want to have some brass in the back of your barrel, you also need a small scrap piece of brass. Here's a piece of 17/32 K&S brass from a old angel breech that I had done, and it's been chopped off over the years. It's got tightening rings, but there's a good 6 inches here. I like to use 1-inch stubs just because it tends to hold my CPVC fitting darts really well, and it lets you build up some extra pressure. Now, there will be a little contention on the next part. I personally like to use rubber washer seals. There's a bunch of different ways to seal out there, but I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how I do this. And for my type of seal, you will need a pair of, I believe these are 1/8 inch rubber washers. I'm not totally sure on the absolute size right now. Let me grab the size for you guys real quick. These are, let's see, about 1 1/4 across diameter by about, let's see, 3/8 inner diameter. And we'll be dremeling these and cutting these however we need to make them fit. And also for the seal, you also need a piece of thin plastic in case you need to actually increase the seal a little bit more. You can just add more material and tighten it up a little bit. So that's for your seal. You will need a couple of different adhesives. You will need epoxy. I recommend a liquid epoxy, preferably. I like the Loctite stuff a lot. I use all Loctite adhesives pretty much. You will need epoxy putty in order to seal the dimples in the turret, and you will also want to have some super glue for your tubing. I do not have the tubing out, but it'll be the same size as tubing that's on here. You're going to need about, I would say about 1.5 feet of 1/4 inch OD, 1/8 inch ID vinyl tubing, preferably rated for pressure. I believe most of it's rated at about 60 psi of pressure. Don't get any of the ice maker stuff generally. You will need a short piece of 3/4 inch PVC. This is going to take a lot of sanding, but the way I do is I actually grind this down and fit it inside the stock pump tube. It's a big ordeal, but you're going to want a short piece of this if you're going to do it my way. There are other options such as electrical tape, but this way is a permanent, very strong method. So you're going to need that. The way I do it is I also need a few small pieces of scrap polycarbonate. This is going to be cut out into a circle for the rotation mech. There are other methods of this. You can reuse the stock thing, but I personally like to stick with something a little stronger. This is 1/8 inch. You really only need about a square inch, honestly. And to hold the rotation mech in place, a lot of people actually use hot glue or epoxy putty, which is another option, but I'm going to be using a polycarbonate piece that I'm going to drill a hole in and epoxy it permanently into the shell. Again, this is all optional. Anything that's not pictured is going to be a couple of pair of 3K spacers. You can order them from myself or from Venom 213. I believe we both sell them for about $5 each. And that really should be about it. There's honestly not much to materials on this blaster. It's pretty straightforward. We have everything inside that we already need pretty much, besides the extra barreling material on the pump. And you're also going to need, I almost forgot one thing. You're also going to need some hot glue. I don't know if you guys can see that, but some hot melt hot glue. We're going to use this to glue the trigger spring. You can also use the big pen method, but I just prefer gluing it because it's simpler and easier. So other than that, let me think if there's anything, and nothing that I can think of is popping in my head. So if I miss anything, I'll go ahead and annotate it in. And I guess now we'll move on to tools.
Does everybody know what time it is? Tool
time! Alright everybody, the tool list for this blaster is actually surprisingly minimal, and I know you might be thinking, oh, it's super complicated looking. But here's some of the basic tools you'll need. You'll want a Dremel. I have a Dremel 4000. You can also use a lower spec model. But you're going to want a couple different speeds so you don't just melt random things and throw sparks and, whatever. So I'm going to slip that back into its little slot. We're going to want a couple of different Dremel accessories. I like having a flap sander to smooth things out and make them pretty. We're also going to want a drum sander to open up the shell. A cutting wheel for the spring that I'm going to mention in a few minutes. And I like to have a carbide cutter just because it's nice for cleaning out little things that need to be gone. We're also going to want a drill. I have an 18-volt lithium ion. You can also use whatever you got. This is going to be to help us make our little bracket to help support how the turret sits, and just opening up the turret and a bunch of things. It's just good to have a good drill on hand. I recommend an 1/8 inch drill bit. You can also I would recommend a few sizes around this. I'm not totally sure if it's 1/8, but I'm 90% positive that it is. So I would recommend a 1/8 inch drill bit and a couple sizes around that. And that'll be for making a little polycarbonate piece to hold the turret in proper spec. We're also going to want a screwdriver, of course. This will be to remove the internals and to open up the blaster, so we can't really do much without this. We're also going to want a 1/2 inch spade bit. And this is going to be to open up the back of the turret for rear loading. Pretty important. You can do it by hand, but it's a pain in the butt. So I recommend a 1/2 inch spade to accompany your drill. We're going to want a couple of different blades. I use an X-Acto and a Cobalt break-off knife. But this is just to clean up cuts and take care of small amounts of material. Be very careful, of course. I've cut myself more times than I care to mention. A pair of scissors, basically to cut vinyl tubing. You can use other methods if you want, but I just like using scissors. You're going to also want a ruler and a small pipe cutter. This is to cut your brass to the proper lengths. I like to use 1-inch segments like I said before. A small needle file is nice just to clean up cuts. If you're not as much of a perfectionist as I am, you can get away without one. A Sharpie to mark said brass and whatever else we need to mark, just because marking things generally makes things come out better because you have a line to follow. Now the most important part of this mod and the most difficult really is getting the turret apart. We're going to need a couple pairs of pliers, needle nose, and a pair of regular just standard pliers. We're also going to need a pot of water, a bigger pot, probably about a 2.5 to 3-quart saucepan, and fill it almost all the way to the top with water. But that'll be explained in another segment, and that's going to be getting the turret apart. It's very dangerous, or I wouldn't say dangerous, but you're going to definitely need to be careful if you've never done it before. Kids, if you need your parents' help, get them to help, but it's definitely the most difficult part of the mod. You're also going to want a couple varying grades of sandpaper. I have a bunch of different kinds, ranging from my 80 grit super rough, which I don't really use that much, to I believe this is a 220 grit, and then I have a super fine 600. And sometimes I even like to polish up with a Scotch-Brite pad just because it helps, shine things up a bit. This is to, just smooth over parts and the cut in the shell, and to smooth the back of the turret so it seals well. And I believe that's everything in parts. In tools. I did miss one thing in the materials section, and we're going to need a spring to upgrade the rotation mech later on. But that's another whole thing, and I'll just have to explain to you guys very thoroughly what works and what doesn't. So I believe that's all the basic tools that you'll need. If there's anything else, I of course will amend it in future video segments. But you also need some stir and sticks for epoxy and whatnot. But I believe I got a pretty solid tool list here. Like I said, not too intensive. Most of these things should be around your house. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them below. And I guess we'll go ahead and I'll just disassemble the blaster on camera and a fast forward, so we have a good starting point for the next video. Alright guys, since I already got it apart now, as you see, I had a bit of problem with the solvent weld up top. You guys are pretty much seeing what I'm looking at right now. I'm going to show you guys what we don't need. First thing is, we don't need this crappy pump head. Just throw that in the garbage somewhere. We are going to keep the pump tube though, so keep this off to a side. We don't need any of the spare tubing on here, so you can go ahead and clip that off. And we're actually going to cut this whole stem off later on. So get rid of that. Oh, sorry, Facebook's beeping at me. We will need the stock trigger. You see this goo gauge? We're going to keep that for... You also want a pair of these, by the way, if you don't. For cosmetic reasons, chop off any extra tubing on it. But do not try to cut it, because it will get everywhere and make a fragrant, smelly fest. So keep a hold of that for cosmetics. I'll actually show you guys how to fill it more to make it look, you know, kind of neat. Of course, this is the tank of the blaster here, and this is the turret that we're going to be modifying by taking out the barrels and whatnot. But you see all this weird extra crap back here? We do not need any of this. So I'll show you guys how to take all that out real quick. First off, these two screws up here, go ahead and pop these out. We don't need them at all, because we're going to be doing a different method with our turret than the stock one. So take these out. Keep the screws if you want them. I think they're the same size as the shell screws. So go ahead and pull them out. Any of this extra crap. Let me pull my garbage can closer so I can just toss it in the trash, because that's where it deserves to go, because I do not like auto rotation 3Ks. I know Make It Go has done one before and had good results, but I just don't care for it. I'd rather manually rotate. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull, let me see it here. It's been a little bit since I've taken one of these things apart. There is a screw back in here that I'm pointing at. Go ahead and take that out all the way, and that'll just get rid of a big lump of crap. Let's see. Let's see if I can pull this all out. I guess not. Let's just pull the tank out. You've got two screws here. You've got one down inside of this hole here, and you've got one here. Make sure you save these screws and put them in actually the right screw port, because I actually like reusing these specific screws for the tank just because. So let me get this screwdriver in here and pull this out real quick if I can line it up. I'm going to need my different screwdriver for this one. There we go. Go ahead and pull that out. Stuff's already fallen out of the shell. Oh, and there's the tank. So, go ahead and pull that out. Set that off to the side for now. There's our two tank, I guess you could say tank screws. So I'm going to go ahead and throw these in the screw container. Throw away any of this extra garbage that's in here, of course. I don't want this. You see this big old blob of crap here? We don't want any of this. So take out the screws holding it in the shell and discard of it in whatever manner you please, whether it be sacrifice to the Nerf gods or whatever else you want to do. So just go ahead and toss it. So now you're left with a clean empty shell and a tank which still has a bunch of crap on it. You're going to want to save the spring on here because it helps with kinking. But these are the rotation mech parts. Do not lose these. Do not take out this screw yet. That'll be in the next video where I show you guys what to do. But there's your pretty basic tank method. Now we have a tank. We have our trigger. We have our pump tube. We have our goo gauge, and that's really all you need besides the shell and various other sundry items. And of course, save all your screws in a little cup or baggie or however. Just don't lose them because Airtech screws are kind of difficult to size, but you guys get the picture. So that's the disassembly, and I've got the other half of the shell right here on me. So let me back up, and this is an overall picture of what we'll need. There's my tools there. But next video we'll work on this part, the turret. That's going to be the biggest issue. So I hope you guys like the video. This will be upcoming. I believe it's going to take probably a few videos. The turret's going to take an entire video at least. But I like doing these videos for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy them. If you're enjoying it so far, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys later, and have a nice day, wherever you're at.